Welcome to Microsoft Excel 2019, Lesson 1 by Megan Reese. In this lesson, we'll begin learning about the basics and parts of Excel, taking apart what an Excel spreadsheet looks like and what all the different things do on a spreadsheet. Because spreadsheets may be brand new to you, so we're going to be figuring that out. Also, we'll be doing some basic page setup, how to add your headers and footers and things like that, and finally some formatting. Quite a bit of formatting, changing colors, shrink text, all kinds of cool stuff like that. So when you pull up the document, when you pull up your lesson 1, it's going to look something like this. And I just want to explain a couple things about it because it might be a little unusual. You look at it going like, that's a train wreck. What is going on over here? So basically, this is where as you go through it and you learn each thing, you check the box to say, okay, I've got it. I did that. And it can be an I did that, but better, this is I understand. So notice this is I can. So this isn't just, oh, I did that section. Okay, because you'll notice when I go to that section, I have well, not that one, but I have check boxes in the instructions here that I did that. What this is, I understand that. I can name all the parts in Excel. I can rename sheets. Don't check the box unless at the very end of the lesson, because you don't check these off till the end, you can do that. You could literally open up a new file and just do it right then without any instruction or having to look at something. So at the very end of the lesson, if you get to a point where you're like, oh, change views, what is that? I'm not sure. Then refer back to this video, go find it in the table of contents and watch that section again and be like, oh yeah, okay, that's what changing view is. So that you're totally sure you know exactly what you're supposed to learn in each lesson. Okay. Now these sections are basically screenshots, but they're pretty cool because, like, for example, look at this part B. I'm going to go to part B over here, and let's say I change this whole thing and make it green. When I come over here, it's going to change it here. So anything that you do on these sheets, that as you do the assignments, it's going to show up. Okay, so when you print this, you can see that it's done. So it's the way the teacher can see it without having to print all these pages. Okay, so you only print this page. I have it set up so that when you print, it can only print the area I've asked you to print it, so it won't print anything else. Now these over here are just, they're the key basically. So when you're done, you can make this key a little bit bigger and put it side by side and look at it and be like, okay, did I get everything? Is it right? So it's a way to check your work and make sure that it's correct. It won't print, and unless you move it over here, it won't print. But it is there for you to help you see if you did all of them correctly. Okay, so that's how lesson 1 is set up. Not all of the lessons in the future will have boxes like this. It just kind of depends on how the lesson is set up. But for formatting, that's one of those things that makes it a little easier to see it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with lesson A. Now remember that this video that you're watching here, I am not going to take you through the lesson step by step. Okay, I'm not going to say, okay, it says here we should do this. This is how. I'm not going to do that. Okay, you need to find it yourself, but I am going to show you how to do each thing. So I'll go through and I'll show you how to rename sheets, how to add a header and footer, how to do sheet colors. I'll show you all this stuff, but not in the context of this assignment. Okay, so as you are doing the assignment and you get to lesson A and you're like, rename lesson A, do I know how to do that? If you know how to do it, then do it. If you don't know how to do it, refer to this video. What you should not do is watch this video from start to finish and then go try to do the assignment. That is not a very good use of your time. Only listen to the parts that you need. Okay, you may have some prior knowledge or you already know it from the previous lesson. No reason to watch a video if you already know what's in it. However, I do see the opposite problem with some of my students where they don't want to watch the video at all and they will sit there the whole period and just stare at it and hope that they'll figure it out. That is also a big waste of your time. It only takes a minute to pull up the video, click on the section you want. I go to great pains to make sure you have a table of contents so you don't have to sit there and spend the whole period searching for what you're looking for. Literally, it takes seconds. So if you're like, oh, I don't know how to change the color, watch the video. Don't bug your teacher. Okay, your teacher could tell you, but then the next time you have to do it, you're not going to remember, and you're going to have to ask your teacher again. Okay? Try to get it on your own. If you find the answers yourself, you're going to remember it. If somebody just tells you, you'll do it, and you'll get your stupid points, and then you'll completely forget how to do it the next day, which defeats the entire purpose of doing this. Okay? So make sure that you are actually finding the answer, and that means you're going to have to refer to the videos. But each section is only a couple minutes, like not even that, seconds sometimes, that will show you how to do it. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started with part A. Okay, So we are going to start with lesson A, and the first part of this has this sheet here. You're going to go and label the parts. So I'm going to explain what all the parts are, but you, as you're watching it, you can pull this down and find the correct answer. Now, this is a pull down menu, and in a much later lesson we'll learn how to make those, okay? But if you're like, oh, the O is, I don't know, I'm not going to say the right answer, but oh, the O is a fill handle, right? If it's wrong, it's not going to give you the point, okay? Or sorry, that's A. If it is right, it will give you the point. I really would not waste your time like checking every one and trying to find the right answer. It's going to take you more time, and it's also going to teach you nothing, and then it's going to come back to bite you. So you might as well just buckle down and learn it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up a blank page in Excel over here, and we're going to go through each of these and make sure you know what they are. So this is assuming you've never used Excel before or used any kind of spreadsheet. Maybe you've used Google Sheets, which is also a spreadsheet. It just doesn't have the same bells and whistles. It has its own bells and whistles, just not the same one. So if you're like me and you use Excel all the time, Google can drive you a little bit crazy, but it does have some things in it that Excel doesn't have. Don't tell me what they are because I don't know. All right, so along the top here, we've got columns going along the top that are lettered. We've got rows going down the side that are numbered. Okay, each individual box here is called a cell. So if you click on a cell, it will tell you what the name of that cell is over here in what's called the name box. In fact, if you hover over it, it will say name box. Okay, so this is J7, this is T, well, I put it T17. Now that's a cell. You can also have what's called a range. Very important to know the difference between a range and a row. Okay, so a range is when you highlight starting here and going to here. That's a range. Okay, whatever that range could be. Okay, so this range would be called G6 through N18. I cannot tell you how many times you're going to see something like, you know, G6 through N18. If it says that, that means I'm going to start in G6 and end in N18. A lot of times in this lesson and all your future lessons, it's going to give you a cell reference like that. It's called a cell reference. I'm telling you where to go. It has a little colon. This is where I start. That's where I finish. Okay, so that's a range. You can also highlight an entire row. So if I click on the row, it's going to highlight it all the way across into Timbuktu. If I do a column, all the way across. So for example, if I do a range and I change the color, it just changes the color there. If I change the color of an entire row, I literally change the color of the entire row, okay? And it goes all the way across really, really far into La La Land. And notice it goes forever. Like if you scroll over, it's just going to keep numbering CX, CY, CZ, and then it'll start over with D, and it goes forever. And it goes a long way this way too. And what I get a lot of when kids pull up Excel is they'll sit there and go, oh man, I wonder how far it goes. And they'll just sit there and get all distracted and not do their work and miss my next instruction because they're sitting there seeing how far it goes. It drives me crazy, but I get it. So don't do that. Okay, the reason you don't want to do that is because really all Excel is a bunch of pieces of papers lying up next to each other. So if you press the space bar, anything, you activated all the sheets before that. Okay, so now when I go to print, it's going to say page 1 of 8,308. So if I were to click print right now, my printer would just print blank pages until either I stop it or it runs out of paper. So not going to make your teacher happy if you pull that. If you've put a header on the page, I don't know if you've done Word yet, but when you do a header, it puts your name on every page. So then we'll all know who did it. So don't do that, okay? Avoid the temptation. Now you're going to see there's a dotted line here. That dotted line didn't appear before. As soon as you've done print preview, it will let you see where the edges of your paper are. And then when you come back, you can see it. So if I zoom out, this is the zoom button right here. I can zoom out. Really, it's just a bunch of papers lying next to each other. And when you see that, it's really not as interesting as you thought, okay? It's just really, really big. If you really want to know how far it goes, if that is just the most important thing in the world to you, click on this little corner button right here, and it will tell you. The answer is a lot, okay? That many rows by that many columns, it's a lot. So there's your answer. Now these are your scroll bars, and if I scroll up, I can get back to where I was. So if for some reason all of a sudden you're like, where did my assignment go? I don't know where it went. It could be that you need to use your scroll bars and get back over to where you started. Okay, up in this corner here, we also have what's called the function, insert function. We're going to learn functions in assignment 2, but these are like preset things that Excel can do, and we'll leave it at that at the moment. But that's kind of a shortcut to pull up a function. This right here is called the formula bar, and it's where you type stuff in. So if I click on something and I start typing, it also types it up here. So if I want to edit something, I can either double click and edit it here, or I can come up here and edit it. Okay, and what's cool about it is if you do like a math problem, say I do like 6 plus 8 or something. So it says 14 here, but the formula bar tells me the formula. Hence, that's why it's called a formula bar. So if you're doing a math problem, which if you're in Excel, you probably are. That's the best thing about Excel is it's just a giant calculator. You can see what the math problem was up here in the formula bar. Okay. When you click on a cell, it's called the active cell. And so the one that has the box around it is the active cell. This little corner right here is called a fill handle. So your cursor can look 3 different ways. You've got a white plus sign, which means you can click and drag. Let me type something in here so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I click on it and I drag, well, it's a white plus sign, it's going to let me select. That's my select tool, and most of the time that's the one you're going to use. If I put my cursor on the edge, it turns into a 4-sided arrow, which if you've ever used Word or PowerPoint, same thing. You see a 4-sided arrow, it means move. Okay? Same thing in PowerPoint or Word. If you have a picture and if you want to move it, you got to get that 4-sided arrow. Okay, so that's the move one. And so sometimes kids will be like, "Oh, I want to highlight this," and then they don't pay attention. They accidentally move it. Just Control Z to go back, fix what you did. The last one is called a fill handle or the autofill. And what you do is you put your cursor over the fill handle, it turns into a black plus sign, and it will copy it all the way down. Now this one won't let you go this way or this way. It only lets you go up, down, and sideways. You can't go diagonal with it. Okay, whereas like with this one I can, right? And we'll get into more detail about what autofill does in lesson 2, but it's pretty sweet. It's one of the coolest things about Excel. Along here we have ribbons, okay? And these are, it's the same in Word and Excel. You've got ribbons going along the top, and they each have all the different things you can do in Excel. Down here we have sheets. Okay, so cool thing about Excel is that it's called a book. Like notice that a new blank one is called a book, and then you can basically add sheets, and you can have a lot of sheets in a book. Okay, like if you look at your assignment over here, okay, you have quite a few sheets right here. See, you've got your cover sheet and all these sheets, and you could have more if you wanted them. Notice there's a dot, dot, dot. That means there's more. I might want to put on the arrow so I can get to all of them, right? So you can have quite a few of those, and you can rename them. Just double click on them, type in them, you can rename them, which is kind of cool. You can change the color. So if you right click on it, you can go to tab color, change the color. So getting a little ahead of myself there, but that's some of the things you can do with that. Okay, a couple other things we haven't covered yet is grid lines. So these actual lines that separate the cells, those are called grid lines. And although you can see them here, if I go to print, they're not going to show up. Although there's probably not much to look at. You're not going to see it, okay? You have to actually add borders to make them visible. But you can make them invisible to you. If you go to View and turn off the grid lines, you can make them invisible, okay? Why would you do that? Well, looks kind of messy, right? But if I go to View and I turn off my grid lines, it looks a lot cleaner suddenly, right? Even though it looks exactly the same if I were to print it. So I haven't really done that in here, but some of your future lessons I have. So that's how the grid lines work. And then finally, you have what's called your header right here. So when you put your cursor between 2 columns and you drag, you can make the columns wider or narrower. Same thing with your rows. You can make them taller or thinner, okay? And why would you do that? Well, maybe you have something in there and it's a really big font, right? And it gets cut off, so you can move it so you can see it, or you can double click and it will resize it automatically. Okay, so then I want to show you a little bit about why you would want to widen it. I'm going to grab some names. I have a name generator I made, so whenever you do my assignments and you see the names are super weird, that's why, because it just randomly selects names from a giant list. So I've got all these names here. See how they're going over the edge? So it looks like there's something in column H, but there's nothing there. Okay, it's just because G is not wide enough to accommodate all those names, right? Now if I double click, it will automatically resize it to the right size. Okay, that should get you through all of the things you need to know. So make sure that in your assignment over here, you've come down here and you've put the correct answers into where each of these letters are. If you've done it right, you should have 18 out of 18. All right, so I'm now going to go through all the stuff that's in here and show you how to do each one of those things. The first one is changing the name of a sheet, which I actually already showed you. If you just double click, you can type something else in there. It has to be different. If there's already a sheet with that name, it's going to get mad at you. Okay, you have to give it its own individual name. And then you can change the color of that sheet. You can also change the order. If you click it and drag it, you can change the order of the sheet where it's found. Okay, and then you can change the color by right-clicking and doing tab color. You can get a new color. okay? Which that wasn't a very good one because you can't really see it, but so that's how you change your tab color. All right. Header and footer, really, really important, okay? I do not want to see a ton of these getting printed without a name, so I'm actually going to show you in the lessons so that I'm absolutely certain you're doing it right. Because notice, say this is all done, when I go to print, okay, it's not going to have your name anywhere. You have to add it, okay? And it's going to be really irritating to see a bunch of these on the printer without names. So what you want to do is go to Insert, and then go to Header and Footer. And then what it does is it changes your view. We're going to talk about changing views in just a second here. You're going to put your name, your period, which I can't spell apparently. And then right here, you're going to do your file name. Now, if you've already done the Word lessons, you learned how to do this in Word, and it was a pain in the butt, and you probably like forgot how to do it because it's such a nightmare. But it's a way easier in Word. In Excel, you just click on file name, and it's done. Okay. Now, I haven't saved this, so it just called it whatever I've saved it as. So you probably want to save it before you do that so that it has your initials or something, and that's when you do save. I highly recommend you save it with like MR, your initials like that, so that's original to you, so that then when it comes up in the Excel file, it's got your name on it. Now let's look at the views really quick. Everything looks kind of weird now, okay, and you might be a little freaked out. In fact, notice it pushed me onto page 2, and you're like, oh, I don't want that page. If I scroll back over, it's okay, it's right there, it's on every page, okay. But in Excel, you have margins, of course, okay? When I print, there's going to be margins around the edges, okay? But Excel doesn't show you the margins because it's really a pain to highlight stuff and do anything when there's space around the edges. It makes it really hard to work with. So that's called normal view. Let me go out of this, okay? Normal view makes it so you cannot see the margins, but they're still there, okay? If I go to print, I didn't get rid of them, I just made them invisible, okay? They're still there. So you pretty much want to be in normal view all the time, okay? But if you need to know where your edges are, you want to make sure you're printing correctly or something, page layout will show you where it is, okay? All right, and then you can go back to normal view. And those are really the only two. There's page break view, I don't ever really use that, but the main ones I use are page layout and normal. All right. Okay, the next part is really important that you get this correct when you do your assignment. So you're going to go to page layout, and there's 3 things you're going to do. And a lot of times throughout all these lessons, you may be required to do this one a lot, because otherwise, when you go to print, it's going to print a bunch. It's going to print 2 pages that are all spread out and don't look very good. We do not want that, okay? So what we're going to do is change the orientation, the margins, and the size, the scale. Okay, so this is going to be in page layout. By the way, if you ever get it stuck like that and you can't see everything, just double click and it will give it back to you. Sorry, my kids get stuck on that all the time. So we're going to go to orientation, and we're going to go to landscape, which makes it, as your elementary school teacher says, the hot dog way or the hamburger way, right? But that actually made it worse. See, now it's 4 pages, okay? But that's okay, we'll fix it. All right, so we made it landscape. Then we're going to go to margins, change them to narrow. So now the white edges are going to be much smaller, which really didn't help much. Okay, it's still 4 pages long. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is a massive trick that you really want to know for Excel, and that is called scale to fit. So to do scale to fit, you could just type a number in here, but you usually don't really know what number you want. So you're going to click on this little arrow guy right here, and you're going to choose fit to, and just keep it at 1 page, and then click OK. And then no matter what you do, it's going to fit on 1 page like it did when I showed you at the beginning of this lesson. That's what's going to make it all fit on 1 page. So it just kind of shrinks it down to what it has to in order to make it fit, okay? Now this stuff isn't printing because I already changed the print settings. It wouldn't normally do that, but I actually went in and did a print area where I highlighted a certain area and said only print this. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but know that if I hadn't done that, if I turned that off, then this stuff would print too. So as long as you keep that out of the print area, you should be fine. Okay, so when you do print this, you want to make sure you've got your name is up there and it's all fitting on 1 page. Make sure you look at your print preview before you print. Do not waste time, especially in Excel. You can accidentally print 8,000 pages at any time. So whenever you print in Excel, always check, is page 1 of 1? Is it fitting? Does my name on it? Is it right? Before you waste paper and ink on an assignment that's not ready. All right, on to part B, which will hopefully be much shorter than part A. That was a bit long. For part B, this is all the stuff we're going to learn in part B. Okay, also in this sheet over here, it will show you all the stuff we're going to learn in part B. So I'm just going to go through each one relatively quickly and make sure you know how to do it. So let's start with just a regular blank page, merge and center, super important. It's going to give you a a range that you highlight, and then you click merge and center. Now, merge and center is the first thing I teach you because it is used all the time, okay? So if you have typing in there, say I have some typing in here, okay, and I highlight, drag across, and merge and center that, it's going to merge and center it. Notice there's an arrow. You could say I just want to merge across. I don't want it to go in the center. You know, you could do that. It's not part of the assignment, but know that you can do that. Google Sheets does that automatically. It drives me crazy. But alignment. So let's talk about alignment. So these are the different kinds of alignment up here. So you've got left, middle, and right. So if I click on something, I can put it on the left, I can put it in the middle, I can put it on the right. Okay. Middle align, however, it doesn't really apply in these ones because they're really skinny, but in this one, if I do middle align, it puts it in the center. Or I can put it at the top, bottom, middle line. So one of them does it going vertically and the other goes horizontally, okay? Use middle align quite a bit. The next thing is copying and pasting. So generally, kids in school have learned this to an art by the time you hit 7th through 9th grade. But if you click on something, you do Control C, it's going to put what I call marching ants around that. Click somewhere else and it will paste it. Notice it pastes all the formatting, everything that went with it. Okay, so that's how you copy and paste. Sometimes that's going to save you a lot of time. Is if you've got something formatted the way you want and it's a repeat, just copy and paste it so you don't have to do it again. So wrapping the text, let's say I have a whole bunch of text in here. Oops. All in one line, and it's carrying over. And I don't necessarily want to widen the column because of whatever reason it doesn't work with my formatting. Okay, in fact, a great example of that is when you look over here in your directions. Okay, I used wrap text right here. So merge and center. See how I had it. I didn't want to make this wider, you know. So I just did wrap text right here, and you can see it's right there. It's turned on wrap text, right? So there's an example of me actually using it. So that means I would choose which section I want, and generally you merge it first, and then you wrap it. Or if I didn't merge it, then I would just do wrap text, and it would push it down like that. Okay, but if you're like, oh, I don't want it to widen the column or the row, I'm just going to do merge and center like that. Maybe double click to get it back to where it was. So, but that's how you wrap text. Okay, the next one is changing font. So if I have font, I can change the size. And you can pull this down. You can also type numbers in by hand. A lot of people don't realize you can do that. Or you can just use the minus and the plus, which is what I use almost exclusively. I'll hardly ever bother with choosing a size. This way you can just kind of eyeball it. You can change the color right here with this little A with the color underneath it. You can pick a different color. Notice you can go to more colors and pick any color that you want. You can also shade the background. So I've got this color in here, and then there's a little paint bucket. I can pull this arrow down, and that lets me shade the background of the picture. So I can go to more colors, and I can go to pick any one of these, or I can go to custom and design pretty much any color ever thought of. Oh, that is just grating to look at, isn't it? That's not much better, but whatever. Okay, so that's shading. And then shrink to fit. Okay, so a lot of times in Excel, you're trying to get stuff to fit in a certain area, and it doesn't always work. So sometimes you wrap the text, you can change the font size. The other thing you can do is shrink to fit. So I'm going to go back to that list of names that we were looking at earlier. Okay, and I'm going to highlight those names and bring them back in. Okay, oh, I got to paste it correctly. Okay, so I have all these names, and they're not quite fitting, but for whatever reason, I don't want to widen it because I need it to be the right size for whatever reason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all these names, and I'm going to go to the alignment tab up here. The alignment group is what this is called. These are groups. Okay, so this is the whole ribbon, but this is the alignment group, the number group, style group. I'm going to pull this little arrow down over here, and I'm going to choose shrink to fit and click OK, and it will literally shrink it to whatever size it has to be in order to stay within the lines. You can do that two ways, by the way. You can also right click and go to format cells, and it will take you to that too if you go to number and alignment. I don't suggest doing it that way on the test though. If you take the MOS test, I've heard that they ding you if you right click, and you get a better score if you go up here. I don't know if that's true. That's what I've heard. So make sure you can know how to do it both ways. Okay, and that's all of part B. I'll tell you, A was long, B was really short. Okay, let's move on to part C. The first thing is how to resize a column. There's two ways to resize a column, or a row for that matter. If you click on the column, you can grab it with your column or your header, okay, your header slider here, and you can drag it. But you might want to make it more exact. So you can right click and go to column width, and type in an actual number, okay? I use this all the time where maybe I want the whole thing to be the same size. So I might highlight across several and then do column width, maybe make it 2, and it makes them all really small, right? Or another cool thing you can do is if you highlight a bunch and then drag it, they'll all drag to that same size. So if you're not sure exactly what size you want, but you want to kind of eyeball it, you can do it that way with multiple columns at the same time, which is kind of cool. All right, next thing is how to insert a row and a column. So again, this is when you need to know the difference between a range. Okay, so I just pulled in some names and phone numbers and dates. All right, we want to insert a new row or a new column. And I want to make sure you understand how to insert rows and how to insert ranges, okay? So if I inserted a new column, I would click on this column, I right click and do insert, and it would put it right inside. Let me widen that so you can kind of see. So that added a new column right here. Okay, I can also delete a column. So I just did the same thing. I just right clicked and I deleted it. Can get rid of the whole column. Okay, let's go back a level there. Same thing with rows. I can delete a whole row if I want, or I can insert a row. And what's kind of cool is if you highlight a bunch of rows and you insert them, it will insert that many extra rows in between, if that's what you're trying to do. What I also want to show you is deleting a range. So if I'm like, oh, I actually want to move everything down, so I could highlight like a section of it and I can literally move it down like this, right? So I can do that. Or if I delete it, it's going to say, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to shift things? How do you want me to shift the information? So if I do that, it will shift all the cells. So it knows kind of what I want. So again, if I deleted this one, and then, or say I delete this, and it's like, okay, what do you want me to do with everything? Do you want to shift the cells left? Do you want to shift them up? Like, how do you want to do that? And I usually want to shift them left so they all come over, right? So that's if you just want to do ranges. So just I throw that in there. All right, removing formatting is really useful. Let's say I've got a whole bunch of formatting on this and I want to get rid of it. You just highlight it, you come into clear. You could clear all, which will just delete everything, which sometimes is what you want to do, or you can do delete the formats. So just gets rid of all the formatting. And then your lessons, there's a whole section that has like a weird format that you have to delete. Okay, but notice it also deleted this format. So this was formatted like a date. And when I did that, I lost my date formats. So sometimes it can work against you. Okay, so text orientation means that I highlight it. I come over here to orientations, this little AB that's like sideways. And I can say, oh, I want it to be angled like that. Or I want it to be vertical like that. I never ever use that one. I use this one all the time though. That one looks kind of cool. And then I'd want to like merge it, right? I'm going to center it so you can kind of see it looks better. Okay, so, or you might want to do something right here where you're like, you know, the Eagles or something. And then I'm going to take my thing and I'm going to rotate it, maybe center it. Okay, maybe resize it. You know, it can look pretty cool. The next thing is borders. So I'm actually going to switch this over to this one so I can show you a little issue we have with borders. But borders, remember that when you print this, you're not going to see the lines. They're not going to show up. You have to add them. Okay, so I can highlight what I want the borders to be, and then I come over here, this is my borders button, I'm going to pull down the arrow, and I have lots of options in here. So I can do all borders, which will just make it all outlined, and if I go to print, then now I can see my outline. Let's go ahead and change these, just a little reminder, I'm going to go ahead and change these into shrink to text so that we can kind of see them. Okay, but the problem is that if you add borders to these ones, it kind of goes over a little bit, and there's really not a lot you can do about that. If you don't like it, then don't use, use a straight up one or whatever, but it will kind of make things weird when you shade it or whatever, but I think it looks kind of cool. So that's borders, but you can also do borders like a thick border. What if you have a border and you don't want that border anymore? Well, then you just highlight what you don't want. Like maybe this section, for some reason, I don't want it to have a border. So I could just come in here and say, no borders. Gets rid of it. And then I just kind of have to repair whatever damage I did, right? And sometimes what can really help, especially on part of your lesson where you do this, is to go into view and remove your grid lines, because then you can really see a lot better what you're doing. So if you need to, you can remove them. You can always put them back. It's just a viewing thing. It doesn't really affect the actual assignment in any way. So yeah, there's your borders. You can also, another border I use a lot is the double bottom border, or bottom double border, because that's like an equal sign. So sometimes we use that a lot when we're doing math. So you'll just notice there's a lot of different options in here. You can even do change colors and stuff. You can play with that if you want, but we're not going to put that in today. Okay, for part D, we're going to talk about currency formatting. So I've just got some different numbers typed in here so we can format them. So if I wanted it to be currency, I would highlight it. You don't need to type in a $sign when you do currency. Don't type in $signs. Just click on it and click on the top $sign up here, which turns it into currency. You can also come up here and do currency or accounting. It's whichever look you like better. Personally, I like the accounting look better. I like having the $signs all line up. But you know, they're both fine. This one is a percentage. Now notice if I have 0.23, it's going to come out beautifully as 23%. But if I have a whole number in there, it's going to do a really big percent. So if that ever happens, you need to change it to 0.21, 0.35, 0.32. So when you were in math class and you said to your teacher, when will I ever need to know this? Now you know. This is why you need to know how to move a decimal point. You'll be using that a lot. Okay, this one is dates. Now notice I can pull down menus up here. So I can right click and go to format cells, which is how I always did it for years. But it's actually probably a lot quicker to do it up here. So if it's up here, grab it. If it's not, you can do more. So I could do a short date, which is what it's set to. I could do a long date, which actually spells it out. Or if neither one of those are great for me, I can go to more numbers formats, and I have a whole bunch of different ways I can type in dates. Okay, so generally I will do either this one or this one. Okay, I like this one because then it makes them all equal and they look nice and even and just nice and pretty. Okay, I'm going to insert a new column here and do text. So text is when you have like a weird, okay, I'll just do the same one that's in your assignment. Like say I have the group period 2, group 1. Okay, that's what that means. My second period, my first group. When I press enter, Excel will automatically think you're talking about a date. And you're like, that's not what I wanted. I didn't mean a date. So what I do is I come up here and I change it to text. And it will just, that's the date in text form. But now I can type 2-1 and it accepts it. The next one is numbers, or phone numbers. And this is called special. So it's probably not going to be in here. So you need to go to more number formats and go to special. And it's already coded in there, so phone number. And it will automatically format it like a phone number, which is really nice. And what's cool about it is that if I've done the blank ones that nobody's typed into yet, but I know I'm going to do it, then when I come in here and I type in my number, sorry, I did one extra, it will automatically put that formatting in, and I don't have to like type in the parentheses and all of that, and all the dashes and all that crap. Okay, this is the social security number, kind of the same thing. These are random numbers or nobody's actual social security number that I know of. You're gonna go to number and special, and we're gonna do a social security number. That pulls it across like that. So there's quite a lot of times when you have to go in and set the formatting correctly. There's also a time in here where you can set the time. So let's do that one. So if I have a time, sorry, let me pull that in. The one that I usually use, it depends if you're talking about time of day or you're talking about minutes. So there's kind of a difference. So you're saying, oh, it's 1:30 p.m. This one is if I'm talking about minutes, and that it was, 0 hours and 2 minutes and 34 seconds, right? So that would be like an actual time, not the time of day, versus like 1:30, p.m. or something. Okay. The next one is a gradient fill. So this is one that, I don't know why kids always forget how to do this. They're always asking me how to do this after they've learned it. So pay attention, don't be that kid. So say I'm putting, cost in here, and I want to make it a little bigger, make it pretty. I want to make it have a gradient fill. So instead of just coloring it one color, okay, I'm going to right click and go to format cells. And then I'm going to go to fill and go to fill effect. And that's where I get to pick 2 colors. You can't do more than 2 colors. Excel's not super fancy that way. And then I click OK and OK, and now it's working out for me. And I've got my little shaded box here. Now what if I've got, percent and date and group and phone, and I want them all to look the same? I can just click on this and do Format Painter, click, Format Painter, click, and I can actually click it, or you can double click the Format Painter and just keep going. Okay, if you double click the Format Painter, oops, on the wrong one. Let me go back. So if I double click on it, I can just keep clicking and then I turn it off. So it's just kind of up to you how you want to work that, okay? So format painting, what it does is it's basically copy and paste, but it copies the formatting instead of the words. Okay, so and notice that when I push it, it stays pushed in, and then when I click somewhere else, it's done. And then I got to dip my brush and do it again, unless of course I choose to do the double click option. Just FYI, I took the MOS test recently, and in both Word and Excel, they tested on Format Painter. So make sure you know that one, because it's definitely going to be one that they're going to ask you to know. Okay, so we did do, I'm going to delete this because that's obnoxious. We learned about how to copy and paste. I can just copy this and paste it somewhere else, right? But I also want to know how to cut and paste. So cutting is Control X, okay? Or you can do cut, and then when you come somewhere else and you paste it, it actually moves it, okay? You can do that way where you cut it, or you can just click it and drag it somewhere else. But it might be that you want to put it on like a different sheet, right? So in that case, you'd want to do the cut and paste, Control X and Control V to paste. Or if it's on the same page, you can drag it. On your assignment, the way it's set up, you can do either one. You could drag it, or you could just cut and paste, whichever works for you. Okay, that is part D, and that concludes this lesson. You now have your application. I'm not going to walk you through the application. It is your job to figure that out from what you've learned in all the previous video. So good luck on your application and on your assignment, and we will see you in lesson 2. Thanks for joining me.